Hi there, everyone. Welcome to STEM Lockdown Digital School. This is grade 12 IT, Information Technology, and I am your presenter, Lalane Lagranzi. And today, as promised, we are going to have a look at the final of 2018, question 3. So this is your OOP question. We've done OOP right at the beginning. So if you would like to revise your OOP questions, you can maybe go and have a look at the videos on YouTube from the 1st of April. I think it was the 1st and the 2nd of April that we covered OOP. The first day we did the class, and the second day we did the main form. So I'm going to jump around on my screen, and I'll continue to reshare my screen with you guys. Just shout if you don't see what I'm talking about. So at the moment you see the question. This is the November of 2018, question 3. In papers before this paper, so anything from the supplementary, which is the March papers in 2018, and all the way down to the final of 2014, you'll find more to practice in question 2 that contains OOP. So from the November of 2018 was the first time that we had 4 questions, and then this question moved to question 3. So I just want to remind you guys to please switch off your videos if you have them on. And let's quickly have a look. Oh, I'm scrolling already. So first we need to understand the scenario. This is a restaurant that needs some kind of software, and it's managing the staff members or the staff numbers of this restaurant. And this is the interface that is always provided in your paper. They have very kindly supplied us with some input. But what I suggest you do is that if it is not supplied, go to the Objects Inspector and complete these values in the edit boxes or in the text property of the edit box, so that you save some time when you're running the program. You are going to have to click on this button, instantiate and display the object, first before you can test the other 2 buttons. So by adding Simply Fabulous Food and 2018 in the edit boxes, you're going to save some time typing while you're testing your program. They have not completed the full name of the owner for us, so that I have done. I've gone to my main form when I got to question 3.2, and I completed the example there as input from the user. So it just speeds up. You're going to type it once anyway, so you could save time if you have to run it more than once. If the first time you ran it, it didn't produce the correct output. So at the top here, they will always, at 3.1, we're going to go to our object class T restaurant that is provided, and they have explained here to you what was given. So there were attributes given. Attributes, the other name for attributes are fields, and they start with F values. And then they also completed a toString for you. So your toString is, you can be asked the toString in 3 ways. The one is it just being given, and you just have to use it in your main form for output. The second is giving you a toString that is not completed, or maybe has some errors in it and you have to fix it up. And the last way is to write the toString yourself. But in this case, we have a completed toString method that we can just use. Now, when we look this table, there will be a table here of your attributes. First, the first column is just the name of the attribute as it is declared in your class. And then there'll be a description. Now, name is easy. We know it is a string. And then year opened, and they say that the year opened is in the format with the 4 Ys. Now, we would assume this is an integer, but you'll see now when we go to the program, it's actually stored as a string. And it's important to take note of the data types of your fields. And then the number of employees, we would expect that as an integer, but that is also something that you'll just double check in the given code of your class. Very important is that you start with your class first. Now, we're going to start at the top, and we are going to do the first question, 3.1.1 first. We're going to complete it, then only move on to the next question. Don't jump around because they often need each other in order to work, your program to work. So here we have, I'm just trying to zoom in, but for some reason doesn't want to zoom in today. Here we have the constructor. And remember in our previous lessons, the very important word for any method that we create, remember a constructor is also a method, a function is a method, and then a procedure is a method. And in this question, we have to write the constructor, and that says we will receive the name of the restaurant. Now, receive here refers to my parameters. And you don't want to create more or less parameters as what the question is asking us to do. So when it says receive the name, so that's the first parameter. Then the second one is the year of the restaurant open. And then the last one is the number of employees. And then it says assign these values to the respective attributes. Now in this question, if I go back up to this table, you'll see that we're actually receiving all the attributes as parameters, but you don't have to receive all of them as in this question. That's why it's important that we do many past papers, because each paper will teach us something else. And in the previous ones, we did not receive all the attributes as parameters, but in this case, we are. Important for you, this whole question, question 3, is all about reading. The answers are actually in the wording. So this is where I say, take your highlighter or your pen and underline or number your parameters 1, 2, and 3. Don't have any more and don't have any less, or your program won't be working. So I'm going to jump back to my class here, T Restaurant. And here you can see the name is string. The year opened is now also string, and that's important to note, because when I want to receive the year, so I want to declare that parameter also as a string. And then the number of employees is an integer number. So for that, I will create a parameter of integer data type. So once you've done this, very important, remember to put your semicolon there, else Control-Shift-C won't work, and that creates then the skeleton code for you. So the skeleton code will just have the constructor and a beginning and an end, and then you have to complete this constructor. Very important is that you get the constructor right. Without the constructor, this question that will count 40 marks of your 150 marks will have no output, so you'll have to code blindly. So very important is that our fields, our attributes, and I'm going to refer to them as fields because they start with an F, and F stands for first. Remember it that way. The fields go first, then your assignment statement, and your parameters go on the right. Remember, the right gives values to the left of an assignment statement. So here I am using my parameters, and I'm assigning values to all my fields, giving the fields on the left values from the right. We also remember F is first in the alphabet. It's before P. Sorry, that's just my dogs hearing someone outside. So here we give our fields initial values. Now, remember your constructor will run first. So therefore, after 3.1.1, which is my constructor, you may now assume that these fields have values because the constructor runs first, and values are now assigned to these fields. So this is our constructor create. And now, who of you guys, maybe you can answer me in the chat, who of you guys can tell me what type of method the next question will be? 3.1.2, will it be a function or would it be a procedure? You can answer in your chat, and let's see what words in there will indicate to me what this is. So the first hint, I want you guys, I'm going to continue to talk. Yes, it's a function, Sean. And the way we know that is because of the word return. So the word return and result indicates that it's a function. So please call the function getNumEmployees. The reason for that is there could be code provided using this function with the name getNumEmployees. I remember them doing that one year in a paper. And if you change this name, then it's not going to work where they have provided code to call this function. Now, who can remember what a get method is named? So we have our constructors and we have mutators, we have our toString and the get, and then we have auxiliary methods. So can you guys type up? I'm going to continue to show you the answer, but I want to know from you, what is a get method called? Because I didn't have to tell you, write a method get that will return the number of employees. They could have worded it differently. And you have to be aware of that specific term. So, hi Mason, see if you know the answer. What is this type of method called? It's the one I didn't mention yet. Okay, so it's going to be a function. And let's see, function, an accessor method. Yes, that's correct. So remember, our fields here, our attributes is what's called encapsulated. Now, that word you will find in theory papers, and it's very important for you guys to do those question 4 and 5s, which is practical in our theory paper. And they often ask you the meaning of encapsulated, and that just means that only my object class T restaurant can get hold of what I declare up in private. Your attributes are always encapsulated, so they are always private. Your methods will mostly be public unless the question states differently. So methods can also be encapsulated. We are returning the number of employees. Now, the number of employees, the attribute we're returning is called fNumEmployees, and it's an integer data type. So your function must also have an integer data type. Nowhere in the question did it mention that it's receiving a value. And these accessor methods, number 1 will be functions. Number 2 will start with a get. Number 3 will be public. Number 4 will not have parameters. And then number 5, it must match the data type of the attribute that it's returning. It will return only one attribute at a time because a function can return only one answer. And remember now, so these accessor methods are really our free marks because they just have one line of code in there and they are often worth quite a few marks. So they could be worth as a maximum to declare a function, to have the correct data type, and then to give your result the value of that attribute. So that's quite a few marks for very little code and quite easy to complete for this question. So remember, your function needs a result. And all we're doing here is we're assigning fNumEmployees to this result. Remember, in our constructor create, fNumEmployees got a value. And soon we're going to also make changes to fNumEmployees. So that is question 3.1.2. And let's go to the next one. And you guys tell me if it's a function or a procedure. This question is saying we want to write a method called increaseNumEmployees. It's receiving an integer value as a parameter. So there's the word receive. It also tells us the data type. And we want to increase the field number of employees by the parameter received. So I don't have an answer yet. Is this a function or is this a procedure? It's a procedure, Bonguye, that is correct, because nowhere does it say or have the word return or result in this question. So we are going to make a change, and this is called a mutator method. So they could have said, write a mutator method, and then you need to know, and usually they actually start with a set, you needed to know then that it was a procedure. And a mutator method does not have to receive a parameter, but it could. In this case, it's not going to receive, well, it is going to receive a parameter, but if they wanted the mutator method to only increase your number of employees by 1 every time it's called, then it won't need a parameter, and our code will look a little different. That has been done before. So the difference between, I see Skalk is asking a mutate and auxiliary method. The next question here, so as a little tip, I usually say if it's not a constructor, a toString, a mutator that makes a change to our existing fields, or it's not an accessor method, it's an auxiliary method. So an auxiliary method, I can't give you any rules for. They can be public, they can be private, they can be functions, and they can be procedures. And they usually just perform some form of calculation for us. So this here is a mutator method because we're making a change to one of our attributes. Now, let's quickly have a look. This is the November of 2018. So final papers are in November, and well, maybe later today we'll hear that yours is in December, but who knows? We're just still waiting for some confirmation of when you guys are going to write. And the March papers, and sometimes they're also called, so last year's, or this year's one is actually called, no, last year's one, 2018, was called June. That's a supplementary paper. So if you are legitimately ill, you won't write in November, you'll write in the following year. Used to be March, but they have postponed it now. It seems to be happen now in June. And that is then the supplementary papers. But they are also good practice because they are on a similar standard. They're not harder. They're not easier. They're on a similar standard as the final exams. Okay, so let's quickly have a look now at our procedure, increase number of employees. Since this is going to receive a parameter, so the majority of the time, well, I would say all of the time, if it's going to receive a parameter, it's going to have to be public. And these mutator methods are always public, they're always procedures. They can or can't or don't have to receive a parameter. That you're going to have to read your question very carefully. So my procedure, remember, does not have a data type at the end of the procedure. So what we have in here is we have our procedure increase number of employees. And the question asked us to increase the number of employees. That's if, remember now, if number of employees was initialized in our constructor create, we are going to add employees to it according to the number sent here. So this is not necessarily 1. They will add a number in the main form, and that number will be sent in here, and we will add that to the existing number of fields, and we'll update now if number of employees according to that. So this was our procedure. Now the next question, you guys tell me, for those who have done it, maybe you have it open in front of you, what will this compile code method function or a procedure? The question says, and now you have, this question actually confused quite a few learners due to the little characters that they used. So good that you guys practice this so you can understand what all of these funny little characters mean, should they ask something similar again. But in the top sentence, I already have my answer. Is this a functional procedure? So I want to know that from you guys while I continue to explain. We are going to call it compile method, and it's receiving the full name of the owner. This was the first part that confused learners because they knew a name was received. But if you go back to the constructor, you will see that what was received there was actually not the name of the owner, but it was the name of the restaurant. So in this method here, we're receiving the name of the owner of the restaurant. So don't get confused. Well done, guys. I see you know it's a function. And the reason why we know it's a function is the word returns appear in the question. So we know we have to create a function. Now, what data type would you say that this function will return if you have a look at the question? Okay, so you guys tell me the data type of this function. While I continue to explain this to you, we have the percentage sign represents the first letter of the name of the restaurant. So the name of the restaurant, remember, we already have a field there that is called fname, and we're going to use that first letter. The second part of the question shows you this $sign, and that is representing the last two letters of the full name of the owner. And this is where lots of learners lost marks. We'll go to that now. Even though it's showing a single character, the wording said the last two characters. So some learners thought that they had to return these characters here. And some thought that this meant one character, but it actually doesn't. It means two because of the wording. And then the last part here is the year of the restaurant that they opened. Now, I see we have an answer here, a string or a char data type. It won't be a char data type because we have multiple chars bound together. So we'll definitely have a string result for our function. And then they say this is an example of an identification code. And then this would be the input. So we're not displaying all of this. We are this identification code. We're returning that part there. So you see it's Simply Fabulous Foods. That's the name of the restaurant. The first character is the S. And then the owner's name is Pieter van Wyk. And we want to grab those last two characters, YK. And then we want to add to that the year open. So this is what you are returning. So that would be a string. And this is an example now of Skalk that asked what is an auxiliary method. This is an example of an auxiliary method. It's not a constructor. It's not a toString. It's not an accessor method. And it's also not a mutator method. It is performing some form of calculation. I see, Teresa, you have raised your hand. Please, can you use the chat to answer questions because we're not unmuting people while we are here. But if you type in your question, I will have a look at it and then I will answer you. Okay, so continue to type your questions as we go along. And I'm going to share my screen again with you guys so that you can see my function named compile code. So it's a function. It said we're receiving a name. I'm reusing pname because it is kind of like a local variable to a method. Remember now, fname is the name of our restaurant and pname that we're receiving now is the name of the owner. And the function here has a string return data type or a string result. So then, by the way, if you forget to type in the data type at the end, so you create a function as we would create a procedure, it's actually not, the Control-Shift-C is not going to work. So make sure that you add data types for all your functions, and your semicolon at the end is also very important. Okay, so here is compile code. The role of an auxiliary method, Teresa, is just to perform some other calculations. So in this case, it is using attributes from our class to create some kind of a code for the person. So it performs some form of calculation. Now, calculations could include string handling. It's actually very much easier to understand if you understand the reasons for having your accessor method. That's to get hold of your fields in your class. Mutators is there to update or make changes to those fields. And your auxiliary methods are there to perform some other form of calculation for you. We have our compile code here. And I hope you guys don't see that. Okay, now I've moved it up so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so functions compile code. And remember, it's the first character of the restaurant. So I'm using my field here, if name, that got a value. This was the restaurant name when I called my constructor create. That's the first character. The second two characters is the last two characters of my owner name. This is where people lost marks, because what people did is they said, copy out the name from the length -2 instead of -1. If you have a look here, John Smith has 10 characters, if that was the name and surname of the owner. And so the length is 10. I want to start copying at character 9. So it is start at character 9, which is 10 minus 1 and not -2. -2 will take you to the 8th character. And then remember, our last argument of copy is not up to where we want to copy, but it's for how many characters do we want to copy. And I want to copy out for 2. So I'm starting at 9 and I'm copying out for 2. So that is where lots of learners lost marks, is when they were copying out for the incorrect number of characters. And then the last bit here was just adding your F here opened, which was already string. And that was the last part of your compile code. So remember now, once we are done with our class, this is a very good time for you guys to now save. Well, you should save a little bit more often, but to definitely save and then run your program. And the button here, question 3.2.1, is asking us to instantiate our object. Instantiating our object, all that means is that we have to call our constructor create. The user must enter the name of the restaurant, the year opened, and the number of employees. Remember, that were our parameters. So let's just have a look again at what our constructor looks like, because here's the rest of the question. Use the data entered. Very important, save your data first into variables. There are often marks allocated for declaring the variables and getting the input from the user. So what I'm doing here is, this is question 3.2.1, the button. There was code provided to clear, and then you would answer after the comment for question 3.2.1. There's my input. The spin edit, remember, it has a .value property. You can use the .text property, but then you have to string to int it. So that's the great thing about a spin init. We don't need typecasting, so we don't need to add a string to int to store that value as an integer. And then we have to get the code here for our constructor create. I'm quickly going to show you, for those who haven't seen the previous lessons, here's a tip. You copy out the declaration, and this declaration was provided. You paste it where you have to instantiate your object. This will always be after input from the user. Then you add an equal sign. And after this, you add a create. And if you coded all of this code above this correctly, then you should get hints as to the number, order, and data type that you have to send the values to. So this is how I usually try and remind you guys. Remember, whenever we're calling a method, we want to match the arguments. That is these variables in my brackets. We want to match the arguments with the parameters in NOD, number, order, and data type. So our constructor create had 3 parameters, so we have to send it 3 arguments. The order is important, so remember the first 2 are both string, but it's important that our constructor needed the name of the restaurant first, so we have to send it here first. If in your constructor you swapped it around, you would just swap it around here where you call that constructor create. So order is name here, number, and last one, D, very important, is data type. So the first 2 are strings, and then the last one is an integer. And the marks are often allocated, and as I remember correctly this year, it was allocated this year, this way, is for 3 marks for your nod. So 1 for number, 1 for order, and 1 for data type. So this line here could be worth quite a bit. And then you were asked to display the toString. The toString was created for you. So remember now, after my constructor create, this is the last time that I use the type T restaurant. Then I will from now on use my object dot and then the method. And a toString can't stand on its own. It's a function, and functions always needs to be called together with another statement. And toStrings are typically called inside of our rich edits or on the right of an assignment statement of a panel or labels caption, or maybe even inside of a show message. I mean, they could even ask us to write the toString to a text file in this question, because you could expect text files in any of one of your questions. So very simple, but let's quickly, I'm going to have a look quickly at what this was worth. These few lines were actually worth 8 marks. So make sure that you know how to create your constructor and instantiate your object. Without this line of code, nothing else will work. Okay, so let's have a look at what the next question was asking. So I'm going to share my screen again. There is question 3.2.2. And this is telling us that the user is entering their full name in the edit box. This is where I added. So what I do is I go and have a look at what is the example of output. I then go to that edit box. Pieter van Wyk is quite a bit to type, and I want to match the output here. So I type it in the text property of the edit box. You are allowed to do that, especially because there's no marks there for inputting anything, or there's no marks for assigning anything to a text property. So also, if this was asking you to make use of a dialog box, you would have had to use an input box. And then as the last argument, I would have put Pieter van Wyk, which saves me time testing my program. So the question says, call the compile method using the full name of the owner as an argument. So remember, compile code was a function that returned this for us. And we were asked to display this code now in the edit box EDT code. So I'm going to share again just now for you guys to see. I get the input from the user from this edit box, and then I assign to the text property of the edit box for EDT ID code, I'm assigning the compile code function. Remember, it's returning a string data type, so I don't need any conversion here. I'm just assigning my compile object.compile code, and I'm sending it this owner name as the argument. And that was it for this question. I'm going to show you guys my form. So this is what I was talking about. I enter default values in here. What is important though, and I'm not quite sure, let me quickly run the program. I think I need to reshare with you guys. I hope this works. So you guys tell me if it doesn't work. I'm going to try this. You should see the running of my program now. And if I click on, so let's say I've tested 3.2.1. and I click on identification code without clicking on 2.1 first, my program will crash and give me that access violation. So it is important that you first click on instantiate the object, then only do you click on identification code. Similar to what we're going to do with the next question, we always have to instantiate the object first. So let me just reshare my screen. Oh goodness, I've stopped the sharing. Let me just get back on there. This is quite fiddly, guys, to get my screen to share. Hopefully, you guys. Johan, can you please switch off your your video there for us? So that was, I'm going to open the chat just in case I lose you guys again. No worries, I see you have a cat. So I see someone's asking which grade this is. This is grade 12. And hopefully you guys have covered OOP in term 1. If you haven't seen this before, you need to go and teach yourself by watching my videos if you search for Africa Teen Gigs, it was April the 1st and the 2nd. Okay, you're in grade 7. Yeah, this would be quite hectic for grade 7 coding. Okay. So, Johan, you're welcome to ask a question. I'm not going to unmute you, but just type your question. I see you've raised your hand. And now we have that was actually quite funny, Shem. We have add employees button, and the person is adding the number of employees that was entered. But this one was actually quite more involved compared to our first 2 questions. And again, lots of marks were lost for not following the wording to the question and not actually using the objects or the methods of your class. This was very, very important. So you'll see that there's a constant declared for you, and lots of learners lost mark because they actually either didn't read, or even if they didn't tell that, you have to look at what's given. And there was a constant declared there for you called IMAX employees, and there was a specific mark for using their constant given. So make sure you look at given code. Then the question then says extract the name from the number of employees from the edit box. That's a grade 10 question. Determine if the extracted number of employees can be added without exceeding the maximum. So before you start adding it, we first need to test if we can add it, and we had to make use of our get accessor method. I'll show you the answer just now. And then it says, if the number of employees can be added, so there's your if statement, and in the true part of my if statement, this is what I'll be doing. Call the relevant methods to increase the number of employees. Display the total of employees in the edit box. And again, yes, you could, to make the program work, you could use the values from the edit box, but then you're not going to score the marks. So this was a question where people lost marks for not using the methods from the class. Remember, you have that accessor method, and you want to use that after you've updated it. And specific marks were allocated for this. So people that even got the right output for this question actually didn't get the full marks, which was actually sad. So if you have a method to use it. And here we go. Then it says here, if this would be in the else part of your if statement, because if it's going to exceed that maximum number, then we have to just display a suitable message. And then they had some 2 sets of input and output. It would be important to test both, so you make sure that your program is working correctly. So let me go to that method. This was add employees. And there is that constant declared for you. So max employees is 40. We had to get the input from the user for our edit box. Then we had to test. If I take this new number, so this is inum, and I add it to the existing number of employees, does it exceed IMAX employees, which is my 40? So if you here used 40, you lost a mark for using this. This single line here was worth quite a lot, because you got marks for, as I remember correctly, for the if statement. You got marks for using your get number of employees, adding this value, and then also make sure that it is greater than. Exceeds means more than. So if the moment that you said greater or equal to, you lost a mark there. And unfortunately, the example of output did not accommodate for you making that mistake. So you probably wouldn't even have known. But if you have done this question, go and check if that is greater than the maximum of employees. Then we had to, so if we couldn't add these values, we had to display a message, and the message here is just exceeds maximum. Again, it's not important to get your spelling correct, but have a proper message in there as per the example of output. Then if it was possible to add these guys, we had to call our increased number of employees method. That was a procedure. So you'll see using object.increase employees on its own, like I would use inc count, and it does not form part of another statement. And then we will send it as an argument, the number of employees that the user entered. Then here, we had to then update or display the updated number of employees in the text property of the edit box. If you did not use get employees here and you used maybe the to edit box, the initial edit box value as a global variable, that's what some learners did, and you added inum and you showed it in here, you lost some marks again. Get employees, number of employees, the function, the reason why we have that is for us to actually get hold of what is the value now, what is the updated value. Okay, so we only have 4 minutes left. This is the end. And remember to test your program, and remember to click on that button of the create button first, the instantiating of the object. And tomorrow, let me just go back to my PowerPoint so we can continue to talk from there. I want you guys, you're welcome to still send me questions until our time is up. So that was now question 3 of the final of 2018. As you can see, it taught us things a little bit, it asked questions a little differently from final of 2019. So therefore, it's important to do as many past papers as we can, and that's my plan for however long we're still doing this. I will continue to work through past papers. Each one will teach us something else. But now, before you go, I want you guys to remember now to go to education.gov.za. This is not only for IT, but for all your subjects. Click on curriculum. Click on National Senior Certificate. Go to the right bottom. You will see the links there to download past papers. And we're busy with the final of 2018, which I think is called the November of 2018. And you can also have a look at the exam guidelines, but we're looking at the exam guidelines of 2018. So you'll click curriculum and then National Curriculum Statement, and then go to 2018 and find the IT guidelines there. Here's a website that could help you guys as well. I just want to go to some questions. So increase number of employees will update field variables. So get will access the updated one. Yes, that's correct. Increase number of field of employees is changing that attribute, and get number of employees is going to give us a the updated value. Bongiwe, do you have some inside info that we're going back on the 6th of May? As I understand, and I'll have a look now, I'm sure we can have an update on the news just now, but as I understand that all the plans are not finalized yet. So as soon as I know, I'll let you guys know in my lesson. But for tomorrow, we're focusing on you. You need to do question 4 of 2018, not as hard as the 2019 one, I believe. So I really want you guys to give it a bash. It does not make use of 2-dimensional arrays. It's only 1-dimensional arrays. So please give it a try, give it your all, and see if you can get it to work. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. And that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching STEM Lockdown Digital School. Please continue to post in the chat messages of what you guys want me to teach. And you will find this YouTube video on Africa Teen Gigs, and also follow them on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Same time, same link tomorrow at 11. Hope to see you soon.